Why God selects dark chosen ones as his elite ambassadors. Have you ever wondered why some of the most powerful spiritual leaders, the most transformative voices, and the most soul-awakening individuals come from the darkest paths imaginable? Why is it that the ones who seem to have walked through hellfire, those who have battled addiction, abuse, rage, abandonment, deep depression, or the absolute silence of the void, are somehow chosen as beacons of light for the rest of us? Why does God seem to select not the polished, not the perfect, not the pure, but the broken, the bruised, the ones society often rejects, as his elite ambassadors? Let me take you on a journey not through temples or scriptures or rituals, but through the raw, visceral truth of why we, the wounded, the misfits, the outcasts, the forgotten, are the ones he calls to the front lines of spiritual transformation. You see, there's something about the darkness that the light can never teach. When you've sat alone in a room, not for minutes or hours, but for years, tormented by your own mind whispering lies that no one loves you, that you have no purpose, that your existence is a cosmic accident, you are being trained, not punished, not doomed, trained, forged, sculpted in divine silence. Because the ones who've tasted the deepest pain are the only ones who can hold space for the deepest healing of others. When you've walked through darkness, you don't offer people cliches, you offer them presence. You don't recite quotes, you offer them your scars as sacred scripture. You become the walking embodiment of "I've been there, and I didn't die, and neither will you." But here's what most people miss. God doesn't choose the dark ones because of their suffering. He chooses them because of what they do with their suffering. Pain is a door, trauma is a seed, darkness is a womb. And those who alchemize it, who choose to face it, feel it, awaken through it, become dangerous to the forces of illusion. They become clear channels, unshakable mountains, divine weapons. And that's what makes them elite.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Do you think Moses was chosen because he was perfect? No. He was a murderer, a man with a speech impediment, a fugitive. And yet, God said, "You will speak for me." Why? Because Moses knew the depths of human guilt. He knew what it meant to run from your past. So when he spoke to Pharaoh, he wasn't just delivering a message. He was delivering himself, a man resurrected by grace. The same is true today. Maybe you've been through darkness that no one knows about. Maybe you've buried parts of your story because they're too painful to speak aloud. But what if those very wounds are your ordination papers? What if God has been watching, not to judge you, but to prepare you? What if your trauma is not your shame, but your anointing? You see, most people want to skip the darkness. They want to go from broken to blissful without walking the valley. But the valley is where the oil is pressed. The cave is where the prophet hears the whisper. The belly of the whale is where the assignment is clarified. The dark night of the soul is not a detour, it's the curriculum of the divine. Let me ask you something deep. Have you ever considered that your suffering was not random, but sacred? That maybe, just maybe, God allowed you to be broken so that no idol within you could survive. That He allowed the people you loved the most to betray you, not to punish you, but to strip you of false attachments. That He permitted the depression, the addiction, the rock bottom, because he knew that only in your unraveling could the real you emerge. We are taught to fear the dark, but in truth, the dark is where life begins. The womb is dark. The soil is dark. The cave of transformation is dark. And the ones God chooses are the ones who did not curse the dark but surrendered to it. There is a reason why the chosen ones often look like the rejected ones. Why the elite ambassadors of the divine have tattoos, criminal records, mental health scars, or a past so messy it would make angels weep. It's because they've lived at the edge of the abyss. And when you live there long enough, you either lose your soul or you find God in a way that no sermon can teach. You don't learn divine compassion by reading it. You learn it by being so broken that your ego dies and all that remains is, I am no better than anyone. That's when you can sit with the addict without judgment. That's when you can hold the hand of the suicidal without needing to fix them. That's when you can look at a liar, a thief, a cheater, and say, I see your soul, not your sin. This is why God selects the dark chosen ones, because they carry the medicine the world desperately needs. And the medicine isn't perfection. The medicine is presence, it's realness, it's vulnerability. It's the ability to say, me too. But make no mistake, this isn't about glorifying pain. This is about glorifying the ones who transform their pain, who take the ashes and build altars, who take the ruins and rebuild temples inside their chest, who turn every heartbreak into a deeper surrender, every mistake into a deeper humility, every fall into a deeper faith. It's easy to preach from a mountain. It's another thing entirely to preach from a pit. And yet, it's in the pit that we find the most authentic voices. The ones who aren't trying to impress you, but to free you. The ones who don't need followers, but are followed because their light is undeniable. The ones who don't speak from ego, but from experience. So if you're listening and you've been through hell, I need you to hear this. You are not disqualified. You are not forgotten. You are not broken beyond repair. You are being forged. And the very things you think disqualify you might actually be your credentials in the kingdom of heaven. Because God doesn't need perfect vessels. He needs honest ones. He needs wholehearted ones. He needs the ones who've been burned but still offer warmth. Now I want to ask you something that might change your life. What if everything you've survived wasn't just for you? What if the abuse, the addiction, the betrayal, what if none of that was wasted? What if you were chosen not despite it, but because of it? What if God has been waiting for you to stop hiding your story, because your story is someone else's survival guide? And what if your darkest moment was actually the moment the divine tapped you on the shoulder and said, now you're ready? The sacred scar, how God uses pain as proof of calling. There's something unmistakably divine about a scar. Not just because it marks where the wound once lived, but because it testifies that the wound didn't win. And here's the paradox that most people miss: God doesn't hide his messengers behind robes, rituals, and religious perfection. He marks them. He brands them with sacred scars. He lets them bleed so they can teach others how to stop the bleeding. He lets them fall so they can show others how to rise. Pain isn't just a side effect of the journey, it is the journey. It is the ink he uses to write your calling into your bones. You may think that your pain disqualifies you, but it actually identifies you. The scar is the seal. It's the divine signature that whispers, this one has been through something. This one has earned their wisdom. This one speaks not from theory, but from the battlefield. And that makes you dangerous to the kingdom of fear, illusion, and shame. Because when you show up not hiding your past, but using it as a platform, you shatter the illusion that people have to be perfect to be powerful. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever looked at your past and wondered why God didn't intervene sooner? Why He didn't stop the abuse, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the addiction? Do you ever look back and think, where were you, God? That question has echoed through the hearts of every chosen one. But here's the deeper truth: God was never absent. He was silent. And silence is not the absence of love. It's the presence of trust. He trusted you to survive. He trusted you to awaken. He trusted you to remember who you are, not despite the pain, but through it. Because pain, when surrendered, becomes revelation. It strips away the false identities, the masks, the ego. It humbles you. And in that humility, God can finally speak. Not through thunder, not through fire, but through that still, small voice that says, you are more than what happened to you. The sacred scar is not just a memory, but it's a message. It says, I went through this so I could guide others through it too. Like a wounded healer, your limp becomes your credential. Your tears become your testimony. Your past becomes holy ground. And suddenly, you realize that everything you tried to hide is the very thing that makes you anointed. Think about it. Would you trust a guide who's never been lost? Would you follow a teacher who's never failed? Would you open your heart to someone who's never had theirs shattered? No, because truth recognizes truth. Pain recognizes pain, and healing recognizes the healer. This is why God selects the dark chosen ones, because they don't offer polished perfection. They offer presence. They don't preach from pulpits. They preach from scars, and those scars are magnetic. They call to the broken, the weary, the ashamed. They whisper, you're not alone. I've been there. And I didn't just survive, I transmuted. So, if you're standing in the ruins of your life, if you're still bleeding from wounds you don't understand, I need you to know this. You're not behind. You're becoming. You're not cursed. You're being carved. The pain is not punishment. It's preparation. And the scar that you think disqualifies you is the very thing that proves you're chosen. But here's the challenge: can you stop hiding it? Can you stop burying it in shame? Can you look at your sacred scar and say, this is where God met me. This is where I woke up. This is where the old me died and the real me was born. Because until you do, the world will miss out on the medicine you carry. The divine strategy: why God hides power in the unlikely and unseen. Have you ever noticed that the most powerful people in this world, the ones who shift atmospheres when they walk into a room, the ones who speak and hearts awaken, the ones who heal not with hands, but with presence, are rarely the ones wearing crowns or titles. They're not the loudest. They're not the most followed. They're not always the ones standing on stages, but they often walk among us unseen, wrapped in humility, cloaked in simplicity, radiating something ancient and eternal that cannot be bought, branded, or faked. That is not coincidence. That is divine strategy. God hides his greatest power in the most unlikely vessels. But it is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. Because true spiritual authority is never built on appearance. It's birthed in obscurity, it's refined in rejection, it's matured in silence. The ones you overlook, the janitor, the single mother, the ex-convict, the introvert in the back of the room, the man who just got out of rehab, those are the ones God is often whispering to in the quiet, training in the background, preparing in the shadow. Because he knows the ones who have nothing to prove are the most dangerous to the kingdom of ego. Think about Jesus. Born in a manger, raised in a backwater town, a carpenter, no prestige, no platform, and yet he carried such power that demons trembled, storms stilled, and the dead rose. Why? Because God was showing us something eternal. Real power doesn't need to perform. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It simply is. And the more hidden it is, the more potent it becomes. So if you feel unseen, unheard, uncelebrated, don't curse the season. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Because when God hides you, he is protecting something sacred in you. He is shielding your anointing from premature exposure. He is teaching you to hear him in the silence before he sends you to speak in the storm. And here's the deep mystery. God often chooses the ones who don't think they're ready. The ones who question, why me? The ones who feel too messy, too flawed, too broken. Why? Because they're the ones who won't steal his glory. They're the ones who will always point back and say, it wasn't me. It was grace. And that humility is the key that unlocks a higher level of spiritual authority. Now, let's go deeper. Why does God choose the dark chosen ones to carry this kind of hidden power? Because they've been emptied. The ego has been shattered. The masks have been burned. They've lost everything that doesn't matter, and in doing so, they've found what does. They've touched the eternal. They've seen behind the veil. And once you've seen that reality, you can't go back to pretending. You can't play church. You can't chase clout. You can't fake wisdom. You become allergic to anything that isn't real. The world looks for influence. God looks for integrity. The world looks for charisma. God looks for character. The world crowns the visible. God anoints the invisible. There are people walking among us right now who carry more spiritual power than presidents and CEOs and influencers combined, but you wouldn't know it by looking at them. They've been trained in the fire. They've been hidden in caves. They've fasted in secret. They've wept on their flaws. They've battled demons in their minds. And now they walk humbly, but carry thunder in their voice when God calls them to speak. So let me ask you something that may change everything. Have you mistaken your hiddenness for insignificance? Because what if your silence isn't abandonment, it's incubation? What if your lack of visibility isn't failure, it's divine shielding? What if nobody seeing you right now is the very proof that God is doing his deepest work in you? Some of the most powerful leaders have no followers. Some of the most awakened souls are never interviewed. Some of the holiest people you'll ever meet will never be known by this world, but they are famous in heaven. And that, my friend, is the only fame that matters. So don't despise your hidden season. Don't rush to be seen. Don't try to force open doors that God has kept shut. Trust the process. Trust the obscurity. Trust the quiet. Because when the time is right, the same God who hid you will reveal you, and when He does, no man can stop it. You are not behind schedule. You are not forgotten. You are not wasting time. You are being trained in the dark to carry light the world has never seen. God hides His elite ambassadors not to withhold them, but to prepare them. And when they emerge, they don't come to impress. They come to transform. The final unveiling, when the forgotten become the flame. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when the silence breaks, when the hiding ends, when the pain is no longer a prison but a platform. It doesn't happen with fanfare. There's no parade, no spotlight. It happens quietly, but unmistakably, like dawn cracking through thick darkness. And in that moment, the ones who were forgotten, mocked, rejected, and overlooked begin to radiate something that can't be ignored. They become flames. Not wildfires that consume, but sacred fires that illuminate, bringing light, warmth, and truth to a world that has long been frozen in fear. You may not feel it yet, but that moment is coming for you. Yes, you. Yes, you. Because if you've survived the darkness, if you've been faithful in the hiding, if you've allowed your ego to die and your soul to expand, then you are not just being healed, you are being commissioned. You are being asked to rise, not as someone who has all the answers, but as someone who has lived the questions, not as someone who is flawless, but as someone who is fearless, someone who knows that the flame inside them is not their own, it is the divine fire of a God who trusts you with His presence. You see, the final unveiling is not about arrival. It's about alignment. It's not about applause. It's about assignment. God doesn't elevate you so you can be admired. He elevates you because He knows you will protect the sacred. You will speak the truth, even when it costs you. You will walk with power, but not with pride, because you remember what it took to get here. You remember what it cost, and that memory keeps you grounded. There's a holy weight that comes with being chosen. The world will look at your light and want to skip the suffering that created it. They'll want your influence without your process. But they won't understand that your wisdom came from wounds, that your clarity came through chaos, that your voice was forged in silence, and that your authority came not from being perfect, but from being real. So what do you do now? You walk forward, not with certainty, but with surrender. You show up when God calls your name. You speak truth when others stay silent. You love deeper than you thought possible. You forgive the ones who tried to destroy you. And most of all, you keep your heart open even though the world taught you to close it. Because the flame you carry is not just for you. It's for the ones still in the dark. It's for the ones who think they're alone. It's for the ones who are you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, yesterday. They need to see that it's possible. That survival can become significance. That trauma can become transformation. That pain can become purpose. That forgotten can become flame. And so I ask you again for the final time, what if your entire life has been a setup for this moment? What if every heartbreak, every betrayal, every night you cried until your soul cracked open was part of a divine equation you couldn't see yet? What if the very things you begged God to take away were the ingredients He used to build your throne of truth? And what if the flame you carry now is the light others have been praying to find? You are not just a survivor. You are not just a voice. You are a living altar, a walking temple, an embodiment of what happens when divinity chooses to dwell in the dark and call it holy. You are the proof that God still writes resurrection stories. And now, it's your turn to become the storyteller. Let the flame speak. Let the world feel it. You are the chosen, and your time is now.